Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Kim Barrett Show. I'm your host, Kim Barrett, and in today's episode, this is part 2 of our interview with Mr. Damian Martin. High-performing teams, competing at the Olympics, everything that you want to hear about that and more in this episode. Let's jump into the show.
You're welcome to check it out. So, opening ceremony jacket. On the inside in yellow, you'll see the host city, country and year of the games. In green, you'll have the Australian athletes who won a gold medal at those games. So when you get it, you're just opening it up. And for me, the nostalgia I got looking at names like Susie O'Neill, Kieran Perkins, Kathy Freeman, athletes I admired growing up was incredible. I was lucky enough to be part of 6 championships with the Wildcats. This is from 2018-19, so we can try it on if you like. And then the Com Games was the last time I represented Australia. I was on the Gold Coast and win a gold medal with mum, dad and a daughter in the crowd. It was a moment I'll never forget. I drove down to mum and dad's house after the Com Games. In the primary school I went to, there's 60 kids total in the school. And so I was talking about the Commonwealth Games, and then at the end I asked for a volunteer to come down and get the medal out of the box. This kid put his hand up, I was like, yeah, come on down, mate. He dropped the box and chipped the medal. So it was going to happen anyway. I'm glad it was in Gloucester, but please don't drop it. So you're welcome to check that out as well. Otherwise, I'll answer any questions you've got.
Yeah, guys, anyone have any questions? I've got plenty. Just for you guys.
Yeah. Awesome.
Hey, nice to meet you. I just wonder how you managed to balance such a stressful, high-pressure lifestyle and family.
So, it was really good for me. So I probably got better at learning how to compartmentalise at the back end of my career because I had gone into business as well. The last thing I wanted to do was retire from basketball and essentially start from scratch on the Monday. And so the last 2 years of my career, I was involved with a real estate company, so I'm an owner of that still to this day. So I'd finished training because I had an interest in property and all the other interests I had, you couldn't really work around my training schedule, whereas with residential sales you can because most people don't want to meet till after 3 hours. So I had to learn how to switch off from a good session or a bad session of training or a win or a loss from the weekend to then move on. So then by the time I had kids, they don't care. If you've won, lost, had a bad session, injury or not, they come and still give you a smile, give you a cuddle and be like, man, all this time I thought life evolved around a win or a loss. Turns out it doesn't. So it's good at really softening me, to be honest, because I'd replay every single possession in my head on the drive home from a game. I'd re-watch it at the back end of my career. I'd call the coach on the drive home and we'd go through the good, the bad and the ugly. And I'd let it dictate who I was as a person, even if I wasn't on the court. And I'll share a story about Luke Longley. So Luke, incredible human being. You would think he should be the happiest person in the world when he was playing for the Bulls in 1992, I think it was, or 93. So he's a guy earning millions of dollars, playing on the greatest team ever, alongside the greatest player of all time in Jordan. Then he got Pippen, Rodman, Steve Kerr, a Hall of Fame coach in Phil Jackson. But he was going through a separation. And he's human. So like any of us, when you're going through tough periods with loved ones, it was affecting him at his place of employment, which happened to be a basketball court. And after a couple of months of just going through this with his then wife, it was Phil, the coach, who called him into the office and said, mate, what's going on? It's like you've got your baggage, your baggage, shit with you again today. And Luke was like, what are you talking about? He said, well, for the last 2 months, your body language is poo, no one wants to be around you as if you smell, and you're playing like poo. He goes, what's going on? I know you well enough that something's happening away from the court. And even though his best friends were on that team, even though all of his teammates would have noticed it, no one had asked him what's going on. And so when Phil asked, he said, well, actually at home, this is what's happening. So they went through it, how can the club support him? And then Phil said, look, there's 2 things I want to let you to leave you with. When you're here at training, you can't fix your marriage. Allow yourself to enjoy being a part of this because it is special to be a part of. And secondly, so I know you're switched on and ready to go, when you walk into training, I want you to make eye contact with me. I want you to pretend you're holding an imaginary bag of poo, open an imaginary bin lid, put it in, close it, and that's my way of knowing you've flushed it and you're ready to move on and focus on training. And it really worked for both of them. And he started playing better basketball, even with things still not great at home. But then he said, one day I was driving to a game, had a big blue with my wife, got to the game, couldn't get it out of my head, was playing horribly, body language was horrible. Phil subbed me out, he said, he brought your bag, go and take it to the players' car park, through the tunnel past security. And Luke's like, what, right now? is right now. If you want to play again this game, you've got to do it right now. So I really want to get footage of this. 25,000 people at Chicago Arena. There'd be this 7'3" Aussie walking past his teammates with an imaginary bag down the tunnel past security and flushed him, and he came back. So hearing things like that, I've realised that we're all going to go through something. If you can compartmentalise it, and I've found that works for me. So when I'm somewhere, I like to be present. One of my strengths when I was playing, which was a learned strength, it wasn't something that came natural to me, was breathing, because that would recenter me. And so if I was conscious of myself breathing, I was like, okay, I'm present. And you need to be present on what offense, defense, whatever it might be. The old, oh man, that quarter went really quickly, or when you drive, you're like, I can't even remember the drive. I just got from A to B, but can't really remember the drive. That's the worst possible thing, in my opinion, that can happen when you're trying to do something special. It happens naturally in life, and you can get through a lot of the times, but for me, come a game night, I want to be present in every single possession. When it comes to kids, I didn't have grey hairs before the kids. They do my head in, but I absolutely adore them, and I want to be present, but I find myself switching off a lot, and I was like, no, be present again. So for me, it's learning it, started with breathing, but yeah, I've got 3 daughters now. Maggie's 6 going on 16. She's always been the mother hen. Bonnie's 4 going on juvenile detention. Bobby's 1, so we'll see what she turns into. But it's the best thing that happened to me in the back of my career, because it gave me an extra reason to play. So people talk about your why do you do certain things? For me, it was just win, win, win. That was my why, and then make teams. And in the back end, when I woke up every day in pain for the last 5 years of my career, my why honestly changed to just, I love the enjoyment my kids get out of it. I just want to play as long as possible. So changing that because of that.
Well, I have 2 questions like that. And one, maybe
I can go.
We can get so.
Thanks so much, Daniel. What an amazing story. What would you say was your pinnacle of your career, and how did you come down from that, from a psychological level?
So whenever I came back from representing Australia, you'd notice a drop-off skill-wise, but it's only marginal. And so you would come back and be like, oh, I've got to go straight into the grind of pre-season. But then it was just a case of I'm doing what I love. Like, I think I had an appreciation of how lucky I was, because probably the setbacks of getting cut from London. And so when I changed all my goals to just try and win as many games as possible, basically, when I was frustrated about something, whether it's sick of my body being sore and living in pain, or losing, or whatever it was going back to, why do I do this, and who am I kidding? I bounce a ball for a living. But the high of winning, to be honest, is not nearly as extreme as the low of losing. I was talking to Bryce Cotton about this just recently. So Bryce has won 3 championships. In my opinion, he's the greatest wildcat of all time. By the time he retires, he'll go down as the NBL's greatest player of all time. But he said the same thing. The 3 championships, within 3 days of winning that, it is about, okay, I want to get back on the court. I've enjoyed that. Now let's get back on the court. Whereas the grand finals we've lost, that sticks with you all off season. And so it just comes back to, did I do the work today? Can I sleep well at night? And, it's like anything in life. If you can sleep well at night knowing you've done the work, you haven't lied, you've wanted everything you've agreed to, and then you sleep and you wake up and you go again. But there are setbacks, losses, injuries, relationships, whatever it might be. But overall, I never wanted the high to be that extreme, never wanted the low to be that extreme. I wanted to live more like that. So I probably didn't celebrate the 4th, 5th and 6th championships as hard as I would have for the first 3. That was more of maturity. It was like, that's amazing, I've ticked that goal. What's next? And I started to find that other things motivated me more as well.
Cool. So I have 2 questions if I can, right? One is personal, and then one is from a business perspective. So my personal question, in a past life, I used to own this gym, and it was a youth athletic development facility, and we had partnerships with Waste, which was really cool. And one of the things that we always looked at was how massively different our collegiate or high school education from an athletic perspective was in comparison with the US. And so we try to bring people in to speak about US-based sporting experiences in that high school, NCAA Division 1 type of representation kind of model, right? And we build some tremendous athletes in Australia, but we don't really fixate on it as much as the US does in those high school years. So my question there, do you think we develop better players if we really fixated and focused on that and invested more money in obviously building our high school and college-based facilities to accommodate what they do in the US?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of population and resources. So population-wise, if you go to a lot of high schools in America, they'll have a high school basketball team that's got their own gym, their own weights facility, etc., so own court, own gym. Which here it's more about representing your town or your association. So I think it's more of a different type of fixtures. So there you represent your high school, here you represent Perry Lakes or Willetton or Joondalup. Because if we did that here and tried to get the same type of quality, it just wouldn't happen. Because I know the high school I went to, it was really only me that played basketball. But when I would go and represent, say, Newcastle, all of us loved basketball, so it's a better quality. America can offer that because you go on the high school team, you might have 3 quality high school kids who then go and play Division 1 or Division 2 college. But they do have the resources where they can train every single day during high school hours. So yes, I do think they'd be better. I don't see it happening in Australia. I don't see it happening in the short term. But what we have that America doesn't is the Australian Institute of Sport, or now called the Centre of Excellence, and the NBA academies. The NBA itself has put a lot of money into this program in Australia. So you've got 12 Australians that are called the Centre of Excellence, and then you've got 12 other players from around the world, similar age gap, that all live together. So you've got 24 of the best players from around the world competing against each other, and it's very unlikely that they don't go on to play professional basketball. So it is, it's who you get to train alongside, the resources, and that for me is the best training facility in the world for kids who are 17 and 18. So Alex Tour is going to get, like, the amount of, it's probably 10 Australians in the NBA right now, and all 10 have gone through that program. So if we could fast track and have a couple more around the country, absolutely, but we don't have the backing right now financially to do it. So they are successful. So if you're pushing kids to train at that elite level alongside others who are going to push them, you're heading in the right direction.
And so from a business perspective then, obviously being part of the Wildcat, you saw obviously this tremendous leadership from players who've been there longer than you, then new players coming in and obviously thriving in that environment, and the coaches kind of leading the team. How can you take that and build that into a business, do you think?
It's understanding the core values you have, or the backbone of why you've had success as well. So Rob Beveridge, he used to say that when it comes to a club, it's got to be player-driven, coach-supported, club-facilitated. So we'd have a players-only meeting, and we'd leave that meeting, like I alluded to before, here's our core values, non-negotiable behaviours, and I'll take that, the leadership group would take that to Bevo and say, okay, this is who we want to be, this is our identity. And if, for example, one of them was be the fittest team in the league. Okay, if we're going to be the fittest team in the league, then we need the coaches and support staff to make sure we're training harder than any other team in the league. But off the back of that, if we're going to wake up daily and do that, we need incredible physios, massage therapists, conditioning coach, whatever it might be. That costs money. So then we've got to be able to go to the club and say, hey, if we get 12,000 bums on seats, that creates an incredible home court advantage, which helps. Make sure we're getting paid on time so we're happy financially, but then also how can you help us on court? Make sure we've got an amazing physio, doctors, etc., etc. So all three have to be aligned on the same page, and that goes in business. The reason I went with the real estate company I'm with is off the back of the processes this guy had. I put up the corniest of photos when I decided to do my sales rep course. Me with a backpack on saying, back to school, I have to make dad proud, it's so stupid. But then when I passed, I put it up, and I was fortunate enough that I had 9 licensees reach out, and I met with all 9 licensees, and probably 5 of them I realised was not who I wanted to be morally. They were your stereotypical sales reps. The other 4 I really liked, dwindled that down to 2, and then it came down to processes, and I negotiated equity in the company. And so he was probably the longest shot of all of them at the start, because it was pretty much a one-man band. He had 1 other sales rep, 1 admin person, but he was backed by the 2 people who owned First National Real Estate in Margaret River. And I thought, okay, if his background is X, Y, and Z, because he used to train up the biggest reps in Florida, and he trained up the biggest reps in Real Market, and he trained up, and they've all had success. I thought, well, even if he never sells, but he's the right coach, and he can teach me the right way, I'll go with him. And now I think in our office, now he does sell, so him and 2 others are number 1 in their suburb. And so I'm grateful I went with it. It came with processes. Like you're a product of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And if you're surrounding yourself with elite people in your field, good things are going to happen. But it stems with knowing what your backbone is. And for him, in this specific one, it was process. In basketball, it's a combination of, I believe you play your best basketball when you're physically fit, you're mentally switched on, and you're confident. 2 of those 3 things are intangibles. It's above your shoulders. So can I help you with your confidence, and can I make sure you're mentally switched on every possession? The fitness will come through not taking shortcuts on the court. And so I would play to those two things. And getting sidetracked here a little bit, but we had a teammate. I was 34 and I had a 17-year-old teammate. Like, I remember sitting across from him going, oh wow, I'm double my teammate's age. And when we go into the weight room, if I controlled the music, you know, Pearl Jam, Cold Cheers, whatever it might be, Mumford & Sons, he had no idea who any of those bands were. But when it was his day to control the music, I'd look at it like, what is this? Like, but I remember one day he was going through, you know, a bit of a form slump. And at the start of the season, he was the young up-and-coming West Aussie, the next big thing to come out of this state. We're winning, and everyone's speaking so highly about him. Then we lost a couple of games, and he got into this pattern of behaviour, which I was unaware of. He'd go on these social media forums, so not just Instagram and Twitter, but actual forums where it's talking about the game. And you've got these couch commentators who, in the emotion of the game, he'd get a turnover, so they used to abuse him. Horrible player, horrible kid, they should get rid of him. Or we'd lose, they bag out the whole team. And he was just reading them. And then he just let that affect his confidence. And that's where I realised you don't lose skill overnight, you can lose confidence. And confidence can affect your perceived skill. And he should never be on these things. And if his loved ones are on him, don't tell him anything. You're never as good as someone says you are after a win, never as bad as you are after a loss. Probably somewhere in between, but more importantly, who cares? And so there's a saying that you should never accept criticism from someone you wouldn't go to for advice. And so I had to talk to him about it. I said, mate, who's your instinct and who do you trust most in the world? And he was like, well, right now, mum, dad, when it comes to basketball, mum, dad, coaches and the people in this room, great. Well, how many of these guys have written on social media that you're horrible at this? And he goes, well, none. Good. Who cares? So we made a promise to stop reading that type of thing. And secondly, you don't listen to the opinions that matter. That's hard. It's easier said than done when he's grown up in an era unlike mine where it was all social media and it's all on his phone. So yeah, you go away from that. So it's also understanding what works and what people might be going through that affects their skill set.
Thanks for sharing everything today. It's really inspiring. Tips from your perspective of sort of getting out of your head in terms of clutch plays and pressure, and whether it's business or on the court, and also with your supplements and your body, etc.
You don't want that. I'm old and slow and broken. So with what's going in your head, I'm a big believer in so there's two I'll go through. So if I wake up to that tomorrow and I realise there's 20 things to go through, in my early 20s, I would have got anxious and how am I going to get through all this, and just would have got through them, but it wouldn't have been done at a good level. But I would have made sure I got through it even when I was up to 3 AM. But then I realised, okay, instead of being overwhelmed by the overall number, I was going to do it step by step. It's boring, this is, easy as that sounds, but if you can literally just tick one box at a time, focus on that, then you'll do a much better job with the next one. And you'll probably find if you're really good at these things, it doesn't lead to 2 or 3 other jobs. So that number of 20 at the start of the day, instead of being 20 again the next day, it's only 10 or only 8. In the heat of the game, it's tough. Like, when you're at the free throw line, you have your routine, so it's pretty good by the back end of your career, to be honest, because hopefully you literally... So Sean Redditch, for example, he used to go, I think it's 3 dribbles, 1, 2, 3, and because he'd practiced so much, he just knew that naturally his routine will take over, but to stay out of his head in a way, like not listening to the crowd booing or not listening to the deafening silence of the home crowd, he would go colour in an object. So I'm pretty sure it was Sean. 1, 2, 3, blue chair. And then just knew that naturally he'd still be able to fulfill his shooting technique because of the tens of thousands of reps he'd done. Others, you can see, do get really nervous in that moment. Others look forward to it. If we were to go into a timeout, there's 30 seconds to go, Trevor Gleeson, the coach, is about to draw up a play. I guarantee you, of the 5 about to go on the court, you've probably got 3 who genuinely want that play drawn up for him, 1 who doesn't even want to be on the floor, and 1 who can't wait to be on the floor, but knows he was to have a role to play. So it doesn't matter what level you play at, feeling those nerves or don't let your teammates down is still a real thing. But at the end of the day, I don't look forward to public speaking, but I don't mind it because I've probably done so many. And it's like that. If you're going into your first ever game-winning shot, you're going to be way nervous, and by the time you're taking your 20th attempt at the game-winning shot, repetitions, confident knowing you've done the work. There's 2 forms of confidence. There's fake and earned. Fake is normally the people that just do all of this. earned is someone like Bryce Cotton, who's the most humble and down-to-earth guy you could ever meet. Never pats himself on his own back, but he works harder than anyone else. So by the time the play is drawn up for BC, he can't wait to have the ball in his hands because he knows he's done the work. I've had another teammate. Biggest regret I've had in my career was mid-season we had a player who was top 5 player in the league, but he was taking away from the team. He didn't stick around after training. All those things I said you should be doing, he wasn't. But he was a top 5 player in the league. He was having a hell of a season from the outside looking in. And we got together and said, do we need to fire him? And I remember thinking, no, I think we can change him. I think that the strength of this leadership will be strong enough to bring him in and make sure he's, doing the extras. But he was the ultimate fake confidence guy. And then I remember a teammate in the same position came to me and said, this guy doesn't even make eye contact with me. It's so disrespectful. So we had to come up with a whole concept where no one knew this, but we said that we're going to do a team building thing. We're going to pair you up with a teammate. You've got to go away outside of training and spend half an hour with them, whatever it might be, and you've got to come back and you're going to do a presentation on them. It's got to be about, and this is a week later, you've got to come back, so we're talking about photos, like this and that, away from any basketball stuff. And we did that literally so we could just do it in an informal way that wasn't obvious, to get these two paired up where they had to talk about things away from basketball, because on the court they were so competitive, vying for the same playing minutes, that one of them just disrespected the other. And they came back and they started to realise this kid grew up with a horrible upbringing. This had happened to his family, he had this success, and they also laughed about the funny thing. So I brought them together. So I thought, yep, we've turned the corner with this player. And then he just went back into me. End of the year, he just didn't want to take the game-winning shots. He didn't want to be around the game because he knew he had not done the hard work. And so if he got fouled and sent to the free throw line, he didn't want to be there. And so fake confidence and real hard work versus natural ability.
You touched on leadership and how being an athlete, not everyone around you has that same mentality. So now coming out of your career as an athlete, how have you adjusted that, and how long has it taken for you to notice that yourself?
It's just about the communication. Yeah. So I realised that jumping to conclusions has never helped me. I used to live in my own head about, am I going to make this team, and then I want to sleep for 2 days, am I going to go do this or that? Sometimes you just don't know until either you ask the question or the timing is right. So one of those I can control, I can ask the questions. Timing, I can't bring forward a scheduled meeting 3 days ahead, so prepare for it. If it's an important meeting, I once got told if you're doing something of importance, you should go with your head full, your heart full, and your hand full. So go in, head, I've done all the knowledge, all the research I know. Heart, make sure you're doing it because you do want to do it, it's something you love. And hand, go in with a notebook, with your questions prepared, with notes taken. So with those types of things, I'll just work backwards. Okay, I'm prepared for it, and if there's questions that are playing over my mind, I'm going to ask them, even if it sounds like a silly question, a basic question, or I'm uncomfortable asking the question. It's like a Band-Aid. Ask the question, rip it off as quickly as possible. Rarely will people get offended if they think you're asking a question for the betterment of that job, betterment of that company, whatever it might be. But just ask it. It doesn't hurt. And ask it, don't text it. Emails and texts can be lost in how you're asking the question. I've seen a lot of heads butting because one misinterpreted what the other person's asking. So that's my biggest thing is asking them. And then getting to know what their goals are, who their family are. You don't have to like your colleagues. Going back to Luke, he said that a lot of those guys on the Bulls didn't like each other. He said, but we had a common goal, that's what brought us together. But if you can like them as well and motivate each other or hold each other accountable and be at a standard which makes life easier, then you all win. So yeah, don't be afraid to go above and beyond. Yeah.
This is a kind of personal question, so I hope it's okay, kind of ties into business. But what advice, I have a 17-year-old brother who we're very excited to know that you would get to listen to your story. He's a brat, very into his basketball. I believe he's very, very talented. Still eats some on toast for breakfast, even though I have gone down and cooked and tried to teach him cooking and tried to teach him the importance of taking care of himself. He's getting to a point where I think he's playing, I don't know, some kind of division. He's really, really happy. He's very talented. But I don't believe you can teach someone motivation and if they really want it. And so what advice would you share, I guess, from your experience?
So some are naturally motivated, and sometimes you're doing it without realising there's a motivation. So, for example, in Gloucester where I grew up, every party we'd go to was essentially within 2 kilometres of where I lived. So every party I went to, even if I was having a few beers or whatever, I'd always run home. And it turns out, not everyone runs home. But I just wanted to do it because I wanted to get a few kilometres in the leg. Every time there was an ad break on TV, I was doing push-ups or sit-ups. And I just realised that it was an obsession I had with sport and fitness. Not everyone has that, but sometimes we judge them saying they're just not motivated. Well, that may not always be the fact. It might be that they don't know what they don't know. So hang on. If you're going to have that and use the consequences, then it's on them to decide whether they still want to have the tail on toes. His metabolism's so quick it probably doesn't matter. But, okay, hey, while you're watching TV, why don't you get down and just do some push-ups or squats or have a ball never further than 3 metres away from you? You know, at bedtime when you're lying in bed, do some form shooting. And so when I got told all these things I could do to continue to get better, I was like, that was easy. I don't know why I haven't been doing this since I was 12. But it took to being 17 in Canberra to be like, okay, that doesn't hurt to have a basketball laying in bed or to wake up and quickly do 50 dribbles, because if he loves it, you won't see that as actually hard work, but it adds up all those little things. So I'd be saying don't judge him as not being motivated. I'd be starting with, it's a case of he doesn't know what he doesn't know, and how can I motivate you? It might be a case of you not believing that even if he puts in all that hard work, there's a shining light at the end of it. So if he just plays because he loves the brotherhood of it, the mateship, and going out there and winning on a weekend, you may not realise actually you could use this to pretend. There's 300 Australians playing collegiate basketball pre-COVID, men and women. That's Division 1, Division 2, and AAA. 300 Australians are now getting a degree paid for a life experience. You know, it's amazing, because not everyone can go on to make money out of the game, but you can still use it as a passport to see the world. So, yeah, maybe it's having something beyond 2, 3, 5 months. You know, if you could do something in basketball in the next 5 years, what would that look like? So, again, asking the questions. Or it just turns out he's not motivated and he's never going to fulfil his natural ability.
Because I mean, yeah, he gets enjoyment from dunking on my 15-month-old son, but you go outside and you go like a mom with my partner who's American and he's very into basketball. So I'm like, then we'll see him win, but it's just trying to give him that motivation because I know he has the talent and it's just, It's knowing where it can go. Yeah. Sometimes you do it because you love it. Other times everyone gets better at team training because you've got a coach to motivate you, teammates to push you. What are you doing outside of that? So even if on your team currently there's someone better, what are you doing so that you become better than them and then better than other people that are vying for your position? And it does come down to outside of allocated training sessions. So there's only so much you can force, but I'd start with the education side of it or trying to motivate with big picture stuff. And WA, to be honest, is probably the worst at tall poppy syndrome. A lot of people don't want to shine because they know they'll get cut down. Mm-hmm. So there's a saying, you don't get taller by cutting other people down. But try telling that to a 15-year-old bully who has a superstar teammate and doesn't like that they're getting attention. So it could be a case of maybe he has been a shining light, heard something. His ego tells him that I want to open up to you and say, don't cut me, but playing around and saying it's okay to be a star. And when you go to the next level, you're going to have the encouragement opposed to people trying to tell you back.
First of all, I have to ask you, is your dad okay?
Yeah, so actually, thank you. He's second, so he'll forever live with cancer, but hopefully he dies of old age. Yeah. So we got through the first one, and then it actually came back, had some more treatment, and he's the most disciplined person I've ever met. So he didn't take a day off work, even though he was going through radiation and things like that. So he'd wake up at 4:30 a.m, he'd drink, he'd eat because, but he had to have empty bowels and full bladder. So he was so disciplined for when he had to eat, then start drinking his water. So by the time he got to Newcastle, an hour 45 away, he could go first on the machine, get his radiation, drive back and be at work by 9:30. And he did that 6 straight weeks, Monday through Friday, break, and then another 6 weeks. So he had the prostate removed the first time. Cancer came back into the area where the prostate would have been, so it's called prostate cancer again, but they can't get rid of all of it, but fingers crossed it doesn't get anything else. Thank you.
My actual question is, obviously as an athlete, you know that your career is finite. You know that there's going to be a certain ending. So at what point in your career did you start to think about beyond, like the transition to something else? You've obviously mentioned real estate and sports management and all that sort of stuff. What was that transition like for you?
It was tough because it was long hours and you don't want to, it's hard to think, okay, this is going to come to an end. because you do love it so much. So I thought I was going into real estate with 3 years left in my career. Turns out it was 2. So I'm glad I did go in when I did. But one of the things we do with the sports management is always prepare the athletes for life outside of that sport. Because one, you may only have a 1-year career. You're only one serious injury away, performance, whatever it might be, from being out of the game. Jesse Wagstaff, the current captain of the Wildcats, is the best example of this. So the Wildcats, if you pursue any type of educational studies and you pass that course, they'll reimburse you for those studies. So Jesse's got 2 engineering degrees, an MBA, and now he's doing finance. And so he's cost the Wildcats something like $90,000. His dream job is honestly to assemble flat packs from IKEA. So he might be the most qualified flat pack assembler, but at least he's preparing and he's got all the paperwork to get him into something. A lot start from scratch, and it's tough. So when you hear about depression after athletes retire, you know, it was a case of they didn't prepare themselves properly, and secondly, always chasing that high of 13,000 people cheering and confetti dropping after you win to punching in and punching out. So it's trying to find something you love. May never love it as much as basketball, but something you love and can still find goals to chase. But yeah, I'm glad I did start, but it wasn't until literally the last 2 years of my career, which was pushing it because at 34, a lot of players are retired, but done by 29.
So you were balancing real estate as well as playing?
Yeah, so when I first joined the real estate company, we actually lost 2 games in a row. And so I'm at home opens on a Saturday morning, out the front, and people were like, "What are you doing here?" I was like, I'm working with this guy. What happened last night? Oh, yeah, it was a bad game. But we didn't want to make any announcement publicly that I joined real estate. The Wildcats approved of it. Then we finally got some wins, and I put it out there that I was doing this as well. But a lot of me also had to come to terms. I didn't grow up wanting to be a real estate rep, but I always enjoyed property. I said, wonderful jungle. And so I had a hard term of actually telling people, because on day one when I sat in that meeting, when I was getting certified, they said, just so you know, going forward, you'll be in the bottom 3 most trusted careers. And that didn't sit well with me at all. I think it was car salesmen, politicians, and then real estate reps. And I nearly left. I was like, no, that's not me. I don't want to be considered like that. So it probably took me 2 or 3 years while I was training up to be a player into being proud to say I own a real estate company. Now I am proud of it. I don't do much selling outside of my area now, but I love that the company is growing and the company's having success and individuals within it are doing well. But yeah, it's funny that juggle. We're trying to go from one to the other, where one, you're so proud to be a part of it, 2, you're learning, and then I think it's confidence through my love for it grew as well.
Yeah. Time for one more. Do you have a favourite book?
Yeah, I love reading Steve Waugh book. So I love Steve Waugh growing up from a leadership perspective. So there's one called The Meaning of Luck, and then Richard Branson's another I love reading about as well, just how expansive his mind was and creative he is. So with Steve Waugh, for example, he says luck is more so about making the most of opportunities presented to you when most others won't even realise there's an opportunity there. And so he says when a batsman, and I'm paraphrasing, if a batsman gets dropped on 12 but goes on to make 100, they say, oh, it was a lucky innings, they could have been out for 12. Whereas he says, that's not lucky at all. It's so hard to compose yourself again, be focused and be ready for the next delivery, to then go on to make 100. You see this as an opportunity to go and do something special. Steve Waugh didn't select Shane Warne for a game against England, I want to say, because he went with Stuart McGill. He thought Stuart was playing the better cricket at that stage. Shane was coming back from an injury. Shane stopped talking to him. But they won the test. And so it would have been the hardest decision he could have ever made, but it was for the betterment of the team. And I've always respected that as well. So when I'm in a room, I get asked questions that I hate offending anyone, but if it's for the betterment of the team or the club or company, then I do it for the right reasons. I can do it. I kind of always reflect on that. That's Steve Waugh. I'll tell you my favourite story from the Olympics was, then I wasn't part of the Beijing Olympics, but it's a story that's passed down from team to team. The Aussies were playing the US in the quarterfinals, so win and you advance the semis, lose and you go home. And every other nation gave the Americans way too much respect, that they lost the mental battle before the game had even begun. So the starting 5 got together and they thought, when we go out there, how can we show the Americans we're not intimidated? And so they said, instead of going out there and saying, I'm going to Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, so on and so forth, go out at the start of the game, lean back and say, I'm guarding number 6, number 8, number 10. be openly disrespectful as if we don't know who their names are. And I thought, yep, this is brilliant. So sure enough, I think it was Mark Worthington was guarding Kobe Bryant, who was the best player in the world at that stage. But instead of saying, I've got Kobe, he leant back and said, I've got number 10. But then Kobe put his hands on his knees, looked over and said, nice shoes. Mark was wearing Kobe Bryant shoes, so I be disrespectful when you spend $200 on a pair of guy's shoes. So, look, the culture of the club, of the Boomers team is amazing. Started well before I joined it. Paddy Mills has been instrumental in it. Matthew Dellavedova. It's a very, very special team to be part of, but that's still my favourite story, is the Beijing Olympics.
Love it. Guys, good day to be ready.
Guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Really appreciate it. And of course, please make sure that you share with someone that you know and share this episode and get it out there a little bit more. Until next time, I'm Kim. You're awesome. We'll see you then.